Okay, so today we're going deep on something pretty huge. Donald Trump's new tariffs, they just kicked in, and they're hitting goods from like 60 countries.
Yeah, 60 a lot of places, right?
It's a lot, yeah. So we've got a bunch of sources, but the main one is this BBC News thing on YouTube. They've got reporters all over the place, DC, Tokyo, Bangkok, Singapore, even some experts chiming in.
Sounds thorough.
It is, yeah. So the goal today is to really break this down for our listeners. What's the immediate impact? What could this mean down the road?
Uh,
And, well, Trump himself called it an explosive situation, so.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just like a little tweak. These tariffs are in full effect now. They could really change how global trade works.
Definitely explosive is a good word.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Right off the bat, we see China is getting hit with tariffs up to 104%. It's
Yeah,
got hurt.
it's a massive number.
Yeah.
But it's not just them.
Mm.
Japan, one of our biggest allies, they're looking at 24%. India, 27%.
Yeah.
And then you've got Southeast Asia. Cambodia's getting slammed with 49%. Vietnam, 46%. Like, this is a global earthquake.
Wow. Okay. So the report from DC says these tariffs have hit with full force, meaning people are feeling it already.
Yeah, for sure. Early signs point to some unease, especially about prices.
Yeah.
Everyday stuff, food, clothes, it's all probably going up. And there are already reports of people stockpiling certain goods. They're expecting these price hikes.
Makes sense. And Wall Street's going crazy too, right? The report mentions wild fluctuations. Basically, every time someone in the White House even like coughs, the market freaks out. Why is that?
It's all about uncertainty.
Yeah.
Markets like things to be predictable, and this is anything but. Every statement, every rumor, even if it's not true, can send shockwaves through the markets.
It's like they're all just holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next.
Pretty much. Investors are trying to figure out how this will impact corporate earnings inflation, the whole economy. It's a tense time.
Okay, so let's talk about Japan. They seem really, really not happy about this. The report uses words like stunned and shocked, and Prime Minister Ishiba actually called it a national crisis.
Yeah, it's a big deal for them. Japan immediately set up a government task force to deal with this. They see it as a serious threat, and they're scrambling to figure out what to do.
It's interesting because Japan's always been a strong U.S. ally. It's not like they're China or anything.
Exactly. They're not usually seen as an economic rival. So this really seems to have caught them off guard.
And the economic impact could be massive, right? Especially for their car industry, which is huge for them. The report says 20% of their exports could be affected, maybe $17 billion in losses.
Yeah, if these tariffs stay in place, that's a huge blow to their auto sector. They're already dealing with existing tariffs, but this new 24% one is a game changer. It makes their cars way more expensive for American buyers, and it throws a wrench in all their long-term plans and supply chains.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to think Japanese car companies are probably freaking out right now trying to figure out what their next move is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's the diplomatic fallout, too. Japan's trying to smooth things over. They had the prime minister call Trump, and they appointed a chief tariff negotiator to try to work something out.
It's like they're pulling out all the stops trying to leverage that long relationship with the U.S. They're a big investor in the U.S. economy, and there's the whole U.S. military presence in Japan thing, too.
Right. It's a complex relationship.
Yeah.
But the fact that these tariffs happen in the first place kind of shows how much things have changed.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how much influence those old ties really have anymore.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. Okay, so let's move on to Southeast Asia. Things aren't looking good there either. Thai markets are taking a hit, but Cambodia is getting slammed with a 49% tariff. What's that going to do to their economy?
And for Cambodia, that's a disaster. Their economy depends heavily on garment exports, and this tariff could shut down factories, cause huge job losses. It's really bad.
In Vietnam, they're in trouble too, right? Their exports to the U.S. make up a big chunk of their GDP.
Yeah, almost a quarter of their GDP comes from those exports. So this 46% tariff is a major problem for them. And then you've got Thailand. Their economy was already struggling, and this is just going to make things worse.
It's interesting, though. All these countries are saying basically the same thing. Don't panic. Let's negotiate. But the report says there's a lot of skepticism about that, especially given what Peter Navarro, the trade counselor, is saying.
Yeah, Navarro's saying the problem is the trade deficit itself, not the actual tariff levels. So basically, the U.S. wants to buy less stuff from these countries and sell them more stuff. It's about balancing the trade relationship.
And it seems like some of these countries were actually benefiting from Trump's earlier tariffs on China. Companies moved their manufacturing to places like Vietnam to avoid those tariffs, and now they're getting hit too. It's like a game of whack-a-mole.
Totally. These trade wars make everything so unpredictable. One day you're benefiting, the next day you're getting hammered. It makes it really hard for businesses to plan for the future when the rules keep changing.
Okay, so let's talk about China. They were kind of the original target of all this. The report says they're frustrated but ready for a fight. They're saying they'll respond firmly and that they can handle the economic pressure.
Yeah, China's definitely going to retaliate. They've done it before. They might put their own tariffs on U.S. goods, or they might do other things like regulatory changes or strategic buying decisions. They've said they have a diverse toolkit, so they got options.
The big question is, can they really absorb the hit from these tariffs? I mean, 104% on some goods, that's got to hurt.
Yeah, it's a big hit for sure,
Yeah.
but they're saying they can handle it. We'll see.
The report also mentions this interesting possibility that China might shift its economic strategy away from exports and focus more on domestic demand. If they can't sell as much stuff overseas, maybe they'll try to sell more stuff to their own people.
That would be a huge change.
Hmm.
For decades, their growth has been all about exports. If they want to switch to a domestic demand-driven economy, that's a big undertaking. It requires a lot of structural reforms to get people spending more money.
Yeah, it's not like you can just flip a switch and suddenly everyone in China starts buying tons of stuff.
Right. It's a long-term process. We're already seeing some signs of economic pressure in China. Their stock market's not doing great. And there's talk of the government stepping in with fiscal and monetary stimulus.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So fiscal stimulus is when the government spends more money or cuts taxes to try to boost the economy. Like they might invest in big infrastructure projects. Monetary stimulus is when the central bank lowers interest rates to make it cheaper for businesses to borrow money and invest.
So basically, they're trying to pump money into the economy to keep it from tanking.
Exactly.
The economic forecasts for China are pretty grim. Goldman Sachs is predicting their GDP growth will drop to 4.5%. That's a big drop from their official target.
It is, and it would have a big impact on the global economy too. China's a huge market. If their growth slows down, it affects everyone.
Okay, so the overall financial markets are basically on a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Sell-offs followed by weak recoveries. It seems like everyone's just nervous and waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lack of confidence in a quick resolution to this trade war. Investors are reacting to the tension between the U.S. and China and the lack of any progress in negotiations. Plus, there are warnings from economists about inflation and a possible recession in the U.S., so that's not helping.
Yeah, it's a lot to be worried about. And then you've got this veteran trader in the report who's basically saying, this is the end of the world. He called it economic Armageddon and the worst policy move out of the White House in 100 years.
That's some strong language. He obviously thinks these tariffs are a huge mistake and that they're going to cause a lot of damage. He probably thinks this is going to lead to a major economic downturn.
It's interesting, though, because Trump's argument is that this will ultimately benefit America in the long run. You know, bring back jobs, boost the economy. But this trader really disagrees with that, especially about the idea of bringing back manufacturing jobs. Like, he specifically mentions iPhones, saying that's just not realistic.
Yeah, that gets to the heart of this whole debate about protectionism versus globalization. You can't just snap your fingers and bring back complex manufacturing to the U.S. Like iPhones are made with parts from all over the world. It's a global supply chain. You can't just recreate that in the U.S. overnight. And even if you could, it would probably be way more expensive.
So basically, this trader thinks Trump's living in a fantasy world.
Pretty much. He thinks these tariffs are based on a misunderstanding of how the global economy actually works.
Okay, so the prediction in the report is that eventually all this pressure from Washington and Wall Street will force everyone back to the negotiating table. But in the meantime, it's the consumers who are going to suffer.
Yeah, it sounds like we're in for a rough ride. The idea is that the economic pain from these tariffs, higher prices for consumers, businesses struggling, that'll eventually get so bad that politicians will have to do something. But who knows how long that'll take. In the meantime, people are going to be feeling it in their wallets.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. And the report also mentions the U.S. tech sector, specifically how these tariffs could hurt companies like Apple and Tesla. They're saying Elon Musk should even step down from government advisory roles because Tesla's become a political symbol.
Yeah, the U.S. tech industry relies on global supply chains and global markets. These tariffs are disrupting those flows, making things more expensive and potentially leading to retaliation from other countries. So it's definitely a problem for them. And Apple and Tesla are particularly vulnerable because they have such a big international presence.
So to sum up, it's clear these tariffs are shaking things up big time. They're affecting everyone from consumers to businesses to entire countries. And there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's a mess. We've got rising prices, worried investors, the possibility of recession, and who knows what's going to happen with trade relations in the long run.
It's a lot to think about. So here's a question for you, the listener. How do you think these tariffs will reshape the global economy and global politics in the long run? It's a big question with no easy answers. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.